Breaking news exclusively from Blue Eye Media. Now, here is freelance reporter Adam Mockler.
All right, everybody, the United States just struck Iran once again, and do not let this administration gaslight you about the sequence of events that took place tonight. For months and months, this administration has been saying we are on the verge of a deal, that Iran no longer has missile capability, and that we've destroyed their entire military. Well, the United States is now claiming that we had to strike them in quote-unquote self-defense strikes. Now, I put that in quotes because it's not believable. There is not a shred of evidence pointing towards that, which we will touch upon in 1 minute. But last night, Marco Rubio was bragging about how we were on the verge of a deal, how things were looking good. J.D. Vance also staked his political career, put it on the line, said a deal was looking good. Donald Trump earlier today, in a moment of hubris, as always, claimed that we were going to precondition a deal on a bunch of countries joining the Abraham Accords and recognizing Israel and protecting Israel. So he was really cocky this morning that we were on the verge of a deal and basically asked for an impossibility. A lot of these countries will only join the Abraham Accords if we all also recognize Palestine as a state and give them sovereignty, which is absolutely a fair swap and needs to happen immediately. But either way, in all of this hubris, we then learn that the United States began to strike Iran. You know, I'm gonna walk you through all of this in a very digestible manner. If you appreciate these videos and the narrative breaking that we do against this administration and these liars in power, make sure you drop a like to help boost the truth. It really goes a long way, and subscribe below. All right, so a few hours ago, we learned through the IRGC that there were explosions near the Bandar Abbas port and the airport, which is directly off of the Strait of Hormuz. So if you can picture the strait, the airport is right off of the coast. Iran then begins to trigger their air defense systems and say that they are ready to take out any hostile targets in their airspace. So immediately, the ceasefire that they're claiming is still going on was broken. Just remember, Iran and the United States have exchanged strikes multiple times during the ceasefire. Israel and Lebanon have exchanged strikes. All of these countries are still fighting, yet the United States, and for some reason the mainstream media continues to report on a quote-unquote ceasefire that simply does not exist. So then, Iran's state-run media, their news agency, begins to say that multiple rounds of consecutive explosions were heard. Nobody really knew what happened until we got more reports that the United States military conducted strikes. Now, I do not want to feed into this administration narrative that these were self-defense strikes, because that's inherently contradictory. The narrative that this administration pushes, that there are no weapons in Iran anymore. They basically say Iran has been defanged from their missiles, from their navy, from their air force, from their defense systems. How many times have you guys watched me go on to CNN or other shows and debate these MAGA stooges who claim that Iran is basically on their knees? Why would we then need to commit self-defense strikes? Even Marco Rubio was saying last night that things were going well. But while I precondition that, while I say that, let me just show you very quickly how CNN is reporting on this. They're basically saying U.S. targets Iranian missile launch sites and boats in, quote, self-defense strikes. So they are putting it in quotes to make sure that people know this is the administration saying that. As negotiations continue, the U.S. military conducted self-defense strikes targeting Iranian missile launch sites and boats around the Strait of Hormuz on Monday, amid a ceasefire between the two countries and ongoing negotiations to end the war. This is what I don't understand. Why are we still classifying this? Why is the media still classifying this as a ceasefire when neither side has ceased firing? We're firing at Iran. They are getting ready their missile defense systems so they can fire on us. And apparently, they were still laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz, which is very, very believable. Iran has been using the Strait of Hormuz to gain regional leverage because they know that the longer they can control the Strait of Hormuz, the longer they can inflict maximum damage on the United States. I don't support these types of violations of international law, but that's the reality of what's happening, and it's believable that they're laying mines today. It's very important to show you what Marco Rubio is saying just last night about the war. He seemed rather bullish on a deal, and now that seems to be off the table. We're basically back to square one. Both sides are firing at each other. Take a listen to this.
Be news later today. I don't have news for you at this very moment, but there might be some news a little later today. There may not be. I hope there will be, but I'm not sure yet. The question is about the Iranian issue, and as I said, there's been some progress done some progress made. Even as I speak to you now, there's some work being done. There is a chance that whether it's later today, tomorrow, in a couple days, we may have something to say. But this issue needs to be solved, as the President has said, one way or the other. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. The straits need to be opened without tolls.
Oh my God, here he goes into the pre-written lines. But the administration was expecting to make an announcement sometime in the past few days. They even said, we're going to make an announcement on a deal, and yet there's nothing. There are more strikes. So Marco Rubio is kind of like treading the line here, saying hopefully something happens. He knows. He's smarter than the rest of the administration, which has come out and lie about this. CNN then reports explosions rock Iran. CENTCOM is confirming that U.S. forces targeted Iranian military facilities responsible for launching a series of attacks against American warships in the Strait of Hormuz. The claim is that the IRGC boats were laying mines in the strait, and now a source close to Iran's Ghalibaf says Iran's, quote, decisive response is now underway. It basically seems like the deal is off. If we're going to enter another escalatory ladder where both sides are trying to one-up each other, then the deal is essentially off. Can I also please point out, this is very important to point out, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov earlier today called Secretary Rubio to advise him to evacuate U.S. citizens and diplomats from Kyiv. So now we're talking about Europe for just one moment rather than the Middle East, but just think about the picture that is being painted here. A weak United States is being taken advantage of by multiple countries right now. Russia is currently calling Rubio and telling all U.S. citizens and diplomats to evacuate from Kyiv as the Kremlin plans to continue heavy strikes on the Ukrainian capital, according to a statement published by Russian Foreign Ministry. So the United States is basically showing weakness on multiple fronts and being attacked on multiple fronts, saying, get your people, get your citizens out of Kyiv. We are going to be striking. On the other end, in Iran, we are making very little progress. And I'm like 99% sure this administration is completely lying about the idea that Iran was heavily attacking warships. CENTCOM spokesman Captain Tim Hawkins says, quote, U.S. forces conducted self-defense strikes in southern Iran today to protect our troops from threats posed to Iranian sources. Targets included missile launch sites and Iranian boats attempting to emplace mines. U.S. CENTCOM continues to defend our forces. Okay, that is believable. The idea that the Iranians were placing mines in the Strait, that's been happening. That's not new. But to call these self-defense strikes as if they were firing on us actively, or as if we were in active danger, is in and of itself a concession that this administration has been lying. I'm going to tweet something like that out. This is like the strongest debunk of this. This administration is conceding that they are lying when they say these were self-defense strikes, because they've been claiming there's nothing left to defend ourselves from. So which one is it? Here's John Bolton on CNN. This is Donald Trump's former national security advisor on CNN admitting that we are getting our lunch eaten on CNN. He worked with Donald Trump during his first term to advise him on national security. And now, I mean, in his eyes, he wants the United States to go harder. He's a huge hawk, but he knows that Iran is outmaneuvering us. Watch.
Well, I hope the negotiations break down, because every day that goes by is a gift to Iran. It gives them 24 more hours to recover from the pummeling they took during the 6 weeks of U.S.-Israeli attack. It gives them time to try and reconstitute their government, which increasingly looks dysfunctional in decision-making capability. And it postpones the day of reckoning, ultimately, when the threat that they pose to control over the Strait of Hormuz is resolved in a way that they never come back and do it again. I think the ceasefire was a mistake. I think these negotiations are a mistake. I think we're on the verge of something that ultimately history will decide was a catastrophic loss for the United States.
Wow. Saying it's a catastrophic loss for the United States according to history. He's taking a little bit of a different framing than I am here, because he wants us to go harder. I think this entire thing is such a mess that Donald Trump immediately needs to find an off-ramp that doesn't totally screw over the United States. But at this very moment, Iran has gained regional control due to their control of the Strait, can continue to gain money over time, and will likely get a sweet deal out of Donald Trump as he is desperate to find an off-ramp. Lord have mercy. I hope that nobody else gets hurt. I hope that the strikes stop. But this is what happens when you have a lunatic president in a cabinet that does not know what they are doing. I see two pathways from here. Pathway one is a dramatic escalation in which the United States begins to strike all of Iran's civilian infrastructure to teach them one final lesson. Now, Donald Trump knows that our missile stockpiles are depleted by about 50%. He also knows that his first strikes didn't really move Iran much, so his only option from here is to commit war crimes. Again, I do not want this to happen, but that is what John Bolton is actually asking for. John Bolton is asking for the escalatory path that finishes out Iran via war crimes, and then they have to basically, they're forced to reopen the strait. The problem with that is there will be a small window of time in which Iran is able to launch their own final salvo, not against the United States, but against all of the energy infrastructure the United States relies on, and that would spike gas prices to like $10. So Iran has Trump checkmated in that regard. The next pathway is a humiliating climb down in which the United States gets no concessions, basically just barely gets the strait reopened, but doesn't get anything on regime change, nothing on nukes, nothing on nuclear enrichment, nor nuclear facilities, and Iran still gets a lot of cash. So it's not a good path for the United States. That's basically the deal that we're heading towards, and that's why John Bolton is pissed. I'm going to leave it there. If you appreciate these breakdowns, then make sure you drop a like, subscribe. I appreciate all of you. Thank you all, and peace out.
Follow Blue Eye Media for exclusive insights and breaking news sources from global-friendly outlets that you'll never get from the mainstream cable TV and antenna radio or satellite outlets. Learn how to play the flute of the world and learn the real facts.